Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Duke, and we're excited to kick off a brand new weekly program called Political Jazz with Oliver McGee. Each week, we'll dive into D.C. politics and speak directly to the man in the know. I'm talking about former White House senior advisor, author of Jumping the Aisle, and fellow Buckeye, Oliver McGee. Oliver O.H.
Hi-oh!
Good to see you. Let's get this train rolling, Oliver. Well, on everybody's mind is the elections. The standard mainstream media narrative is we won't talk about the Senate because that looks like the Republicans are going to keep it. But there's no chance in hell Republicans are going to win the House. Talk about that for us.
Well, I think the Republicans are going to take both houses. This is about the Kavanaugh effect. And I think that we're going to see a bigger effect than we thought. People at home in middle America really was upset about the circus that took place in the confirmation. And it's still resting on their minds. That was the October surprise. But also what's emerging is this election is about immigration. The caravan is a big story. And it's basically going to be another second backfire, second overreach by the Democrats that's going to have some implications. But more importantly, Donald Trump has also dropped in another October surprise, which is that 10% middle class tax cut. That is great news. We might as well look for Trump Santa at Christmas time because he's going to drive that through. And he's doing that a little bit, interestingly, outside of the staff in the White House.
Yeah, let's talk about, you had some interesting arguments there about the House elections. I mean, the fact that the mainstream media is not talking about the Senate race as much shows you that it's pretty solidly Democrat, but they're trying to push that narrative. You mentioned the caravan. Anderson Cooper, CNN, today came out and basically said CNN is not going to show any film clip footage whatsoever of the caravan because it's not an invasion, and so therefore we're not going to underwrite Trump's quote-unquote lie. Talk more in your estimation about what this caravan means. I agree with you. I think it is an October surprise. I think it's a huge mistake in timing by the progressive forces that want open borders. Talk about the caravan a little more specifically.
Well, it's an overreach from the Kavanaugh effect. It's a violation of Title VIII U.S. Code. And more importantly, under that code, Title VIII, the U.S. president has the authoritative presidential power to protect the borders. So when you see an overt invasion of the southern border, in a national security interest, even beyond immigration, national security interest calls for the president in his authority, constitutional authority, to protect the border. And he is also working diplomacy with Mexico and other southern countries to start taking care of your sovereignty.
What do you think will happen? I mean, now it's so speculative. Still 1,000 miles away, this caravan. And it sounds like the caravan is not going to approach the American border until well after the election, it seems, right? It would be unless they get extra help. What do you think the president would and should do if we find that moment in time 3 weeks from now where you have 20,000 immigrants, illegal immigrants, trying to press their way through at the southern border? What would you suspect the president's steps would be?
It's almost looking to me like when I see the pictures, almost like a human rights violation. You know, you got women and children and are being carried along and they're on their feet. You and I walking from Wisconsin or Texas to California, we're in for a long walk. And I'm telling you, we're going to have some hurting feet there. So I don't think we're really thinking this through very carefully. But when they do make the border, I think the president should just get a nice big military aircraft, get them all on board and fly them all back home. Because you cannot cross the border illegally. That's it. Game over. So we're not going to have very large events. We're just going to enforce the law. And that's really what we should be doing. And then this is all getting, the rallies are wonderful. All they're saying is build that wall, build that wall. And this is good pictures for that message, that campaign promise.
Now, you mentioned a couple of times now the Kavanaugh effect, and I think that's true. And I think there are many more American women, the quiet majority of American women, who in the background appreciate Trump's commitments to all sorts of things that have helped their families. Tell me why, though. The media seems to be over it. We're not getting a lot of analysis about the Kavanaugh effect, unless it's progressive outlets to say there is no effect. Tell me what makes you think that the Kavanaugh story will still loom very, very large in the midterm elections in a few weeks.
The Kavanaugh effect was simply about due process. I think people were really wanting that and seeing that happen in the Senate. How does the Senate invoke due process? How does it investigate new talent? And how do we put new talent to serve the country and to serve the president? We were watching that very carefully. And also we were watching how we do the conversation of due process. It got ugly. It turned into a circus. It was embarrassing. And I think the American people rejected it. I think people in the middle of America, what we might call flyover America, said, this is not what I want to teach my children. This is not what I want to discuss with my children. Now that the hearings are over, have you noticed that the conversation on the airways has gotten a little bit more cleaner? We're talking about real substantive issues about immigration. We're talking about taxes for the middle class. We're not talking about hookers and prostitutes, which absolutely annoyed me. I turned off my television set. And if I'm turning off my television set, I think millions others were as well. But we did watch the Kavanaugh hearings because we wanted to see what Ms. Ford had to say and to give her a chance to have her hearing. Everybody deserves to have their hearing. But we also wanted to see Brett Kavanaugh and have his hearing as well. But we also saw a fine jurist going forward after 7 FBI checks. So we also saw that he was cleansed and he was very, very cleared through the president to go on. I think that we were celebrating that the president stood by his nominee for that SCOTUS appointment. And this is the first president that's been most disclosing about the 20 appointments that he has going forward after Ruth Bader Ginsburg retires. So I think we're all very much so going to the polls with POTUS on the ballot, but also SCOTUS on the ballot. And that is the midterms.
Last question I want to ask you about that, both houses going red. We know that the polls are untrustworthy at best, deceptive at worst. Talk a little bit. All the polling on the ground, we keep hearing from the so-called experts, as we did in 2016, that the race is overwhelmingly in the House favoring Democrats. I don't believe that any more than you do, but can you give me a sense of when you look around what's happening from state to state, some of the more popular races that are being run, what gives you that added conviction that Trump will be enough to carry over into some of these states and keep the House in Republican hands?
Really quick, I think the big message that we took away from the Cruz rally was when you have tens of thousands of people, and in the case of Cruz, 100,000 people coming out to the rallies to hear the president speak about candidates. He's doing a lot of speaking about local candidates. Then that is a message that tells you the enthusiasm of the voting base. And this is what the Kavanaugh effect did. It woke up a sleeping giant. In the 2016 elections, when I was predicting much of President Trump becoming president since he rolled down the stairs in New York, I was on board right away. I said this is a silent majority. This election was about enough, just like 2014 midterms was about enough. What we see right now in 2018, it's about enough. And the Kavanaugh effect basically said enough is enough. And so I think that's where we're seeing the roll towards the red wave from what was a theoretical blue wave. Look at how many people showed up for Biden in the Gillum rally. He's having the same turnouts as Hillary had, and Trump is having 4 rallies a week that are just television sensations. And the enthusiasm is just like the 2016 election, if not more. So POTUS is on this ballot, and that's historic. A midterm election, get ready for some history making. We're going to have red houses on November 7th.
Well, it's absolutely true that we have seen nothing like the Trump phenomenon at these rallies since the Obama rallies back in 2006 and 7. So that bodes well for the president and the country. Oliver, it's always a great pleasure talking to you. We will see you again next week on Political Jazz. Stay straight, my friend.